Here's what you missed in the last 16 hours. You had 16 videos worth catching up on, covering everything from Anthropic's business crisis and Apple's CEO transition to massive new renewable energy projects and OpenAI's latest workplace automation tools. Let's start with the biggest story of the day. Matthew Berman was absolutely livid about what he calls Anthropic's fundamental miscalculation. He traced their current problems back to CEO Dario Amodei's conservative approach to compute investment, which Berman argues was completely wrong given how the market played out. Dario explained on the Dwarkesh podcast that with 10x annual revenue growth, buying compute for projected future revenue could bankrupt the company if growth slowed even slightly. He specifically mentioned that buying $1 trillion of compute for 2027 based on projected trillion-dollar revenue would destroy them if revenue fell to $800 billion. But here's the thing, the revenue growth did continue, and now Anthropic can't meet demand. They're literally preventing paying customers from using tokens they're shelling out $200 a month for. Berman showed how this created two massive problems. First, a complete PR nightmare, and second, OpenAI capitalizing on every bit of excess demand. The situation got so bad that Anthropic announced on Easter weekend that Claude subscriptions couldn't be used with third-party tools like OpenClaw anymore, forcing users to expensive API keys. Meanwhile, Sam Altman was practically drunk tweeting hints about GPT 5.5 launching Thursday while making pointed references to Claude code users. Berman's analysis was that everything traces back to this one miscalculation. Sam Altman put his entire company at risk based on conviction about AI's growth trajectory, and he was right while Dario was wrong. Now OpenAI is capturing market share, while Anthropic alienates customers with restrictive policies that make an already broken situation worse. Speaking of major leadership changes, Apple just announced John Ternus as their new CEO after Tim Cook's departure, and he's facing what the AI Daily Brief calls an incredibly daunting task of remaking the company for the AI era. The timing is fascinating because Apple has been largely written off in the AI race after failing to deliver on basic Apple Intelligence features, including the updated Siri that everyone actually wanted. But there's this interesting counter-narrative emerging. The Mac Mini became the hardware of choice for OpenClaw users, leading to nationwide sellouts, and cutting-edge AI features consistently launch on Mac first now. Still, critics point out that despite Cook transforming Apple from $350 billion to $4 trillion over 15 years, Apple's 11x market cap increase actually lagged behind Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Facebook during the same period. Ternus faces three major challenges according to the information: fixing Apple's AI strategy, managing the transition with Cook staying as executive chairman, and decoupling from Chinese suppliers. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman suggests Ternus will bring back Jobs-era decisiveness. While Cook avoids making decisions by asking questions, Ternus will make definitive choices even if they're wrong. Meanwhile, Google created a strike team to catch up on AI coding after acknowledging Anthropic's lead, with Sergey Brin telling staff they must urgently bridge the gap in agentic execution. Amazon doubled down with a massive $25 billion Anthropic investment, and Meta announced 10% headcount reductions while launching a workforce training program for data center construction jobs. Now let's talk about what might be the most significant AI development you missed. OpenAI's ChatGPT Images 2 is absolutely dominating arena with an unprecedented 242-point lead over the previous best model. But here's what makes this really important. It's not just better at making pretty pictures. This is being positioned as the first image model truly ready for agentic integration, particularly in UI design workflows when paired with codecs. The quality threshold breakthrough was real. Users noted the dramatic reduction in AI-ness, with images looking genuinely realistic, including imperfect regular photography. The technical improvements included greater precision for small text, iconography, and tiny UI elements at up to 2K resolution. But the game changer is the codecs integration potential. Multiple users highlighted that GPT Image 2 can generate website mockups that codecs can turn directly into working code. Peter Gostev outlined the workflow: generate UI image natively in codecs, have codecs implement the UI based on the image, then iterate until alignment. This addresses codex's biggest limitation, UI design, which has kept Claude Code as many people's primary tool. Riley Brown even asked for a specific book image with working barcode, and when scanned, it actually linked to the correct publication. However, there are limitations. A human anatomy professor found extra veins and mislabeled parts in what looked like an impressive medical diagram, highlighting that for certain use cases, the tolerance for mistakes is not 5% but 0%. On the same day, OpenAI announced workspace agents in ChatGPT, essentially customizable AI teammates that monitor tools like Slack and Linear, automatically handle routine tasks, and work continuously to keep projects moving. The demonstration was impressive. When asked to summarize 24 hours of feedback and draft a team email, the agent pulled product feedback from Slack, searched channels, called Linear issues, and composed a comprehensive summary. More importantly, when a user reported a bug about uploaded images appearing rotated sideways, the agent checked existing issues, determined it was new, and automatically filed it in Linear with reproduction steps. These agents can be set up to run on schedules like every Friday with a simple run analysis message, removing the burden from teams to remember routine tasks. The feature is available in ChatGPT Business, Enterprise, and Education tiers, with use cases spanning lead outreach, month-end close, software review, KPI monitoring, and intake triage. OpenAI also demonstrated several specific workplace agents in action. Slate automates software review processes by researching tools, checking against approved lists, and routing requests appropriately. When an employee requested video recording software for DMOS, Slate researched the tool, compared it against existing approved software, provided a recommendation, and automatically created a Jira ticket since the request required IT support to provision additional seats. Another agent handles weekly metrics reporting by connecting to Google Drive, calculating metrics using custom skills, and running on schedules to generate team readouts without manual intervention. There's also Trove for third-party risk management that automates vendor due diligence workflows, and Spark for sales teams that handles lead qualification, outreach emails, and follow-ups. The key insight is that these aren't just chatbots. They're persistent teammates that work 24/7, following established team processes and integrating with existing tools like Slack, Linear, Gmail, and Google Drive. Shifting to local AI models, there was breaking news in the coding space with a detailed comparison between Gemma 4 and Qwen 3.6. The results were surprising. Qwen 3.6 absolutely dominates on speed and autonomous coding tasks, scoring 73 versus 52 on SWE bench compared to Gemma 431B on a single RTX 4090. Qwen runs at 175 tokens per second, while Gemma manages only 43 tokens per second, a 4x difference that translates to waiting 8 minutes versus 2 minutes for the same task. But here's the twist. Gemma 4 excels at tool calling reliability with 86% first-pass accuracy compared to Qwen requiring up to 10 attempts. For production automations where failed tool calls cost real time, this reliability matters more than raw benchmark scores. Gemma 4 also crushes mathematical reasoning, scoring 89% on AIME 2026, described as near-frontier mathematical planning from a model that fits on a single consumer GPU. There's also a crucial technical fix for Gemma 4 users. You need the Jinya flag in Llama, CPP, or tool calling breaks completely. The choice depends on your use case. For agentic coding on 24GB GPU, use Qwen 3.6, but for production tool calling or enterprise environments, Gemma 431B is the way to go. On a completely different note, Colorado's age verification bill took a bizarre turn that has serious implications for the tech industry. Brian Lunjuk from the Lunjuk Journal was genuinely frustrated about amendments that add exemptions for all open-source software, including operating systems, code repositories, and containers. While this might sound good on the surface, Lunjuk argues it creates massive legal inconsistencies and discrimination issues. The amendments mean children using Linux or open-source browsers supposedly don't need protection, while children using Windows or commercial software do. Since Android is largely open source, Firefox and Chromium are predominantly open source. These exemptions would cover roughly 80% of computer users, essentially defeating the bill's stated purpose. Lunjuk pointed out that source code has been ruled as speech protected by First Amendment rights, so these bills constitute compelled speech violations anyway. Carl Richel from System 76 has been working with lawmakers to push these exemptions, but Lunjuk argues this approach makes an already broken bill worse by adding legal complexity while failing to actually protect children. The real problem is these exemptions reveal that protecting children isn't the real goal. It's about something else entirely. For something completely different, Dave's Garage gave us an amazing deep dive into 1980s computing with his PDP 1144 minicomputer teardown. Dave was genuinely enthusiastic showing off the internal components, including the math board with 16 AMD 2901-bit slice processors that cascade bits from chip to chip, plus 4 megabytes of RAM across 4 boards, an enormous amount that would have been brutally expensive in the 1980s. The centerpiece was the massive RAW 81 hard drive with a 14-inch platter spinning at 3,500 RPM, powered by a motor comparable to a big block Chevy starter motor. The system includes some fascinating hybrid technology. There's a Uni-Bone card containing an actual BeagleBone Linux computer that interfaces with the PDP-11 bus, and an Amul X SCSI controller connected to a modern Zulu SCSI board with a 32GB SD card containing images of various operating systems. Dave explained the DMA grant system and showed how empty slots need adapter cards to bridge signals that full cards normally pass along. Unfortunately, when he tried to power everything up after the demonstration, the combined load from the computer plus the RAW 80 one motor start tripped the breaker, and something appears to have been damaged during the card removal process. The CarEdge father-son duo documented something pretty shocking in the automotive industry. Car prices have reached truly insane levels, with the average transaction price hitting nearly $50,000, and it's causing massive inventory problems. Walking through dealership lots, they found vehicles sitting unsold for months, even entry-level models. At Subaru, sales were down 23.5%, with Outback sales specifically down 43% year-over-year, and they found one Forester that had been on the lot for 123 days despite Foresters being Subaru's volume leader. Most shocking were Outbacks with MSRPs exceeding $50,000, putting them in Lexus territory. Subaru eliminated the base trim for 2026, forcing the entry price up $6,000 which is backfiring completely. At Volkswagen, the situation was even worse. Atlas SUVs sitting for over 155 days, approaching $60,000, and EV models like the ID. Buzz sitting for over 450 days at $60,000+. The father was particularly outraged that Volkswagen, historically the people's car, had become unaffordable to regular consumers. Even Hyundai Elantras under $30,000 had over 130 days of inventory supply. The math doesn't work. Manufacturers haven't reduced prices enough to stimulate demand, but they also can't keep building inventory that just sits on lots. The Electric Viking covered America's biggest clean energy milestone. The SunZia wind project is now operational with 916 turbines generating 3.5 gigawatts, enough electricity for 3 million people. What makes this really interesting is the cost comparison. The entire SunZia project cost around $8 billion, while the UK's Hinkley Point C nuclear reactor cost $35 billion for similar power output. The project includes 242 Vestas V163 4.5 megawatt turbines, plus 674 GE Vernova turbines, connected by a 550-mile high-voltage transmission line from New Mexico to Arizona. The strategic timing is perfect. Wind tends to blow more at night, making it complementary to solar farms for evening peak demand. Sam Evans explained how traditional baseload power concepts are changing, with the Australian National University declaring baseload power functionally extinct. The presenter noted that grids with significant solar capacity experience dramatic midday price drops due to the duck curve phenomenon. And in Australia, with 4 million households having rooftop solar, grid demand actually falls during peak solar production. The economics are compelling. Wind energy is dramatically cheaper than nuclear power when you factor in the full costs. Finally, Sam Evans delivered a scathing analysis of Nissan's 2030 recovery plan that he called completely delusional. New CEO Ivan Espinosa unveiled a strategy centered on V6 engines and hybrids to grow sales 20%. But given Nissan's dire situation, double junk debt rating, potential bankruptcy within 2 years, and 7 straight years of declining sales, Evans argued this approach is divorced from reality. The company is closing 7 factories globally, firing 20,000 employees, and even sold and now rents back their global headquarters in Japan. Despite this massive cost-cutting, they lost $400 million in the last quarter alone, putting them on track for $1.5 billion in annual losses. Evans was particularly incredulous about betting on V6 engines in 2031 when the industry is moving toward electrification. Nissan's global deliveries have fallen to 3.3 million vehicles, 20-year lows not seen since Carlos Ghosn's rescue plan. The presenter couldn't reconcile how they expect 20% sales growth while simultaneously closing factories, firing employees, and canceling models. Regional performance was awful across the board. North American sales down 1%, Japanese deliveries down 20%, European sales down 11%, and Chinese deliveries down 13%. Evans concluded that he found absolutely nothing legitimate that would help Nissan survive beyond 2028, characterizing their strategy as hiding their heads in the sand. That's your complete rundown of the last 16 hours. Between AI companies reshuffling the deck, massive infrastructure projects coming online, and some companies making questionable strategic bets, it's been quite a day in tech and beyond.